On October 30th, 1735, John Adams was born into a family of farmers and shoemakers in Braintree, Massachusetts. He enjoyed hunting and fishing at a young age. In 1751, Adams was admitted into Harvard College at the age of 15. He later graduated from Harvard in 1755. After graduating and receiving his undergraduate degree and master's in 1758, he started practicing law in nearby Boston. In 1765, Adams' legal career was rising and became a part of the Sons of Liberty, an organization opposing taxation from Parliament. In 1783, Adams helped create the Treaty of Paris, ending the American Revolution. In 1789, John Adams became America's first vice president. Adams was quite unhappy with being in such a stalemate. In 1796, however, in the first contested presidential election in American history, John Adams was elected president. His presidency lasted from 1797 to 1801. As a Federalist, his ideas did not agree with the vice president, Thomas Jefferson, a Republican Democrat from Virginia. The Chief Justice at the time was John Roberts.
Many French leaders were unhappy about the signing of the Jay Treaty, a treaty made with Great Britain in order to resolve issues between the two countries. By February 1796, the treaty had been ratified by the US and Great Britain. France, at war with England at the time, took this as a violation of its Treaty of 1778 with the US. Due to this, the French leaders decided to issue an order allowing for the capture of American merchant ships. Wanting to ease tensions, Adams sent 3 U.S. envoys to France: Elbridge Gerry, Charles Cotesworth Pinckney, and John Marshall. After arriving in France, the 3 found out that they were unable to meet with the foreign minister, Marquis de Talleyrand. The envoys were instead approached by several intermediaries: Nicholas Hubbard, W., Jean Hottinguer, X., Pierre Bellamy, Y., and Lucien Houteval, Z. The French intermediaries stated that Talleyrand would only be willing to meet with the Americans if the United States give France a low-interest loan, pay American merchant claims against the French, and lastly, pay a bribe to Talleyrand. The U.S. envoys were shocked and suspicious that this would change anything in French policy, and were unwilling to fulfill his demands. However, as French military victories in Europe increased French power, the French changed the loan terms and threatened an invasion of the United States if the U.S. envoys did not surrender. In the meantime, the envoys' dispatches reached the United States. President Adams prepared for war, and pro-war Federalists, called High Federalists, supported him. The High Federalists were supporters of Hamilton's policies and had mostly the same beliefs of Federalists, but wanted to go to war with France. When the U.S. envoys were unwilling to meet French demands, Talleyrand eventually met with them formally and dropped most of his requirements, but did not agree to end the seizure of American ships. In the meantime, the U.S. Navy began to fight the French in the Caribbean, while still offering support to Toussaint Louverture in Haiti. Adams released the correspondence by request from the Democratic Republican Party, but replaced the names of the French intermediaries with the letters W, X, Y, and Z. Adams continued preparations for war, but did not openly declare war, ultimately wanting to avoid a major war. Congress approved a commission to negotiate an agreement with the French government. Talleyrand feared that hostilities with the U.S. might escalate into a full-scale war and informed American government that he would accept a new American diplomatic representative. Adams nominated a new representative to France despite public and Federalist disappointment that there would be no war, but conceded to Federalist demands.
While John Adams may have avoided a possibly major war from the XYZ affair, the Alien and Sedition Acts were his most notable mistakes during his presidency. The Alien Acts were a series of 3 laws passed by U.S. Congress in 1798 amid widespread fear that war with France was imminent. The laws increased the waiting period for naturalization from 5 to 14 years, allowed to detain of subjects of an enemy nation, and authorized the chief executive to expel any alien he considered dangerous. The Sedition Act of 1798 restricted the activities of foreign residents in the country and limited freedom of speech and the press. It banned publishing of any writings against the government. No aliens were deported, but 25 were prosecuted, resulting in 10 convictions. The Kentucky and Virginia Resolution were later written anonymously by James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, drafted in 1798 and 1799, stating that the Sedition Act and Alien Act were unconstitutional. The Midnight Appointments of 1801 were arguments between the Federalists and Republicans between December 12th and March 14th in Massachusetts. The fundamental problem was how much power should be given to the federal government and, in particular, the federal judiciary. John Adams wanted to preserve federal influence in the federal government before Thomas Jefferson became president, since Jefferson was Democratic. It represented an effort to solve an issue in the U.S. Supreme Court during the early 19th century. There were many debates and cases in those midnight appointments. One of the cases was Marbury v. Madison, which took place in 1803.
The Convention of 1800 ended the war between France and the US, but since the new agreement made no compensation for the capture of US merchant ships, the Senate did not ratify a finalized version of the treaty until December 18, 1801. France agreed to return captured US ships, and the US agreed to compensate its citizens for $20 million in damages inflicted by France on American shipping. The convention also terminated the alliance the US had with France, and it took a century and a half before they had another formal alliance with France.